G'day there guys, Connor here checking in. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Today we're just going to be reading some more Reddit stories, so sit back, relax and enjoy. Cheers. Okie dokie, this one was originally posted on Am I the A-Hole? It was written by user Savings Carpenter and it's titled, Am I the A-Hole for telling my parents they were horrible and saying they shouldn't have more kids? Hi, first time posting. I, 16 male, was born when my parents were very young. Like my mother was 16 and my father was 17. Both families decided it would be best for me if effectively my maternal grandparents raised me and my biological parents got to live their lives. That is not to say I didn't know who my actual parents were. This is not one of those situations like in movies where the mother pretends the daughter's child is actually her own. I and everyone knew who my progenitors were. Progenitors, great saying. My father moved away when he was 18, but my mother remained in my grandparents' house until she was 23, and I was around 7, but that doesn't mean we were close. She always treated me more like an annoying little brother rather than a son. She didn't like spending time with me, never attended any of my school functions or showed interest in my academic work or took me to do any fun activities. Whenever I was talking about my day, she would roll her eyes or change the topic to shut me up. When she moved out, I barely saw her. She just came to family gatherings and said an awkward hi and not even look at me. It hurt, even if by that point I already considered my grandparents to be more my parents than her. My father was still living away. They weren't together at this point, but would come once or twice a year to visit his own family around the holidays, and always made it a point to visit me and take me to do some sort of fun activities, like going to the cinema or my favourite restaurant, things like that. But to me he was more like a strange man than a dad, because when I compared him to my friends' fathers, who picked them up from school every day and went to their games and played with them on the weekends, I didn't understand why this man, who I saw maybe twice a year, was supposed to be the same. Anyway, fast forward to a year ago. My father moved back to the same city where we live. He tried to hang out with me more often, but I wasn't really interested, although sometimes I complied. I don't hate him, I just don't know him. I even had a bedroom in his apartment, which is cool because he lives in the center of the city. Behind everyone's back, both my parents had started to hang out, and a couple months later, they announced they were dating. It was a shock. They asked me to move in with them to my father's apartment, which I refused, but they argued that we could finally be a family. I was about to start an argument on them when my grandma just said that changing school districts would be very inconvenient and I could lose all my friends, and the situation de-escalated by itself, although my parents didn't let go of the idea. My parents asked for me to spend more time with them, and this was particularly frustrating, because even though I'd never had any particular tension with my father, I most definitely do with my mother. I don't like being around her, and she's treated me poorly my whole life, and I feel like she's now only trying to save face because she knows my dad wants me there. Now onto the issue. Last week, they both came into my grandparents' house. They announced they were going to buy a house nearby in the neighbourhood so that I can finally move in with them. I immediately said no, and when they said that changing schools would no longer be an issue, I found myself in a corner, and I said that was never the problem, and that I just simply don't see them as my parents, and don't want to live with them. That's when they dropped the bomb on us. Not only they wanted me to move in with them so we could be a family, but my mother was pregnant, so we were going to be a bigger family even. I was shocked, and I blew my lid on them. I told them they were the worst parents in the world, and that they abandoned me for 16 years, and now they were going to bring another child into the world and do the same to them. And they never apologized for treating me like garbage, and like a mistake they made, and making me feel like I wasn't supposed to exist, and dumping me to be other people's responsibility, and only now that they feel like they care, they want to be my family. My mother screamed back at me, telling me I was a brat, and that she wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, raising her second baby. And I told her she never raised me to begin with, and my father said that they were young and trying to do the best they could. Well, guess what? The best you could was pretty effing bad. I stormed out and went to my room sobbing. I've been very depressed for the last week. They've both called and texted since, but I ignored them. My grandparents agree with me that I shouldn't move, and that my parents shouldn't expect me to be all loving and forgiving after how they've treated me. However, they believe they're starting a new chapter of their lives now that they're more mature and stable, which I guess leaves me behind. I've also had time to think that I'm the same age my mother was when she had me, and what a huge responsibility that must have been. However, I still can't forgive them. Am I the a-hole for the way I reacted to the news? Nah, I mean definitely not the a-hole. I mean there's years of baggage there you have to unpack. You can't just expect this kid to forgive and forget the neglect that he suffered as a kid. Having said that, it sounds like his grandparents are great people and they probably brought him up very well. But the way his biological parents are waltzing into his life like this is totally unacceptable. I'm not suggesting reconciliation is off the cards already, but there definitely needs to be work done here. Let's go to the comments. First, I'm so sorry you've got crappy parents. Not the a-hole as far as what you said. They needed to hear it. Your grandparents are your real parents. They stepped up when you were let down. Not the a-hole. Sounds like your grandparents are raising a smart and well-balanced person. For the sake of your future mental health, get to know your parents very slowly and from a distance. Observe their behaviours with one another and separately. Does your dad treat you differently when the mother is around? Does she treat you differently when he is around? All of this is key to your choices. From your explanation, there doesn't seem to be a reason to change your living arrangements. They're simply closer to your home, and you all can get to know each other better. Your grandparents probably have some deeper input, but don't want to persuade you. Ask their opinions. They clearly care deeply. Not the a-hole, and I'm so glad you have your grandparents in your life. When you're ready, consider meeting your bio father alone at a coffee shop and let him know that your bio mother made it clear your entire life she never wanted you and definitely didn't want a relationship with you. If he wants to build a relationship or friendship, it will have to be between just the two of you. I honestly would be worried your mother, besides wanting to look good to your father by claiming a relationship with you, is also looking for free childcare. She seems extremely selfish. Yeah, that's a good point actually. Opie makes an edit. Thank you everyone for the verdict of not the a-hole. I feel better and it has somewhat cleared my mind. Also huge thank you to all that are commenting about how awesome my grandparents are. I'm planning on showing them this post so they can see how much everyone can see the amazing kind of people they are, and they deserve all the love and appreciation I could possibly give them, and more. I've also come to the conclusion that I have a lot of resentments and unanswered questions, as well as misgivings about the future that I need to set straight with primarily my father. He needs to know how I grew up, and I need to know why he abandoned me. I also feel like I need to warn him about my mother because I'm worried about my sibling being abandoned and mistreated like I was. So I'm preparing a list of points and questions that I want to bring up to him, and we'll meet tomorrow or the day after, and I'll confront him with all of these to hopefully get some sort of closure or resolution. Opie answers some comments. More information on relationship with mum and dad. My father really wants us to be a happy family. When the three of us are together, you can see him beaming with joy, like he can't actually stop himself from smiling and making comments like, "This is everything one could possibly want," and stuff like that. I think probably my mother has sold him a completely different story on what our relationship was growing up when he left, and he doesn't seem to notice the tension between me and her. As far as my living arrangements, they would have to pull me screaming out of my grandparents, and they signed away their paternal rights sometime after I was born, so I don't think they even have a legal foot to stand on if it came to that, but I just hope they can come to respect my decision. Someone says, when you're ready, consider meeting your dad alone to find out information from him. Opie says, I was thinking that too. I want to have a conversation with my father, mostly about my concerns about my mother and what to do moving forward. The more I think about this, the more I'm scared about my little sibling because I'm not sure how my mother would take care of him. I'm starting to feel like there's a lot of things that I don't know about the time when I was born and why I was effectively abandoned because my other set of grandparents, paternal, don't live far away and I see them occasionally, but it's always more uncomfortable with them. They have other children and grandchildren, whereas my mother is an only child, so when I visit them I feel like the odd one out because I'm usually alone in a big family environment. But about why my dad didn't reach out to me, I don't know, and I want to confront him about that. As far as I'm aware, when he was away, he didn't keep much contact with my mother either. This is just since he came back. That's why I feel like I need to talk with him and set things straight, because I feel so lost, honestly. Yeah, and who can blame him? Alrighty folks, on to an update, 3 days later. Hi everyone, thank you all for the responses, it really helped a lot. It's been an emotional couple of days and a lot has happened. My mind is a little bit dispersed, but I feel like I owed you all an update, and I'm going to try and be as clear as possible. For those of you who didn't read my original post, the gist of it basically was that my parents had me when they were very young. They got separated and left me to be raised by my maternal grandparents. My mother was around but couldn't care less about me, but my dad went away and we had very sporadic but positive contact. Now he's come back and they're back together. They're having a new baby and want me back into their lives. I refused and told them they're horrible and shouldn't have kids, which brings us to the post. First of all, I shared my post with my grandparents and they were so surprised by it. They were very happy to see how many people commented about how amazing they are, and I, in turn, also took the opportunity to tell them how much I loved them and how much I appreciated everything they'd ever done for me. They are my real parents, and nothing is ever going to change that. There were some tears, and they told me they loved me and how proud they were of me. They never thought of themselves of doing something special or worth so much appreciation. They were just taking care of family, but they are the best. After that, I started trying to collect my thoughts and arranging a meeting with my father to discuss the things that were bothering me. Why did he abandon me? Why did he think he could just reappear into my life like that? That I wasn't going to move in with them, and I didn't consider them my parents because they never acted as such, etc. We met at a park, and he went to hug me, but I stepped away, and he looked hurt, and he just apologized for what happened the other day, and went into this speech about how we could try to transition into living together part-time and respect my boundaries, and I went blank. I didn't expect for him to talk, so I pulled out my phone and just showed him the post I made the other day, and he started reading it in silence. After a while, he read it all and showed some responses, and he just asked me if this was true, and I said yes, and he asked me if I had questions he would answer honestly. I asked what happened when I was born, and he told me that when my mother got pregnant, all options were laid on the table. Abortion, adoption, marriage, Gramps taking care of me, only one of my parents taking me in. My mother was deadly scared of abortion because some religious group had told them some horror story about dead babies and mothers being killers or some BS like that, so she wanted to give me up for adoption, but my father refused. He couldn't bear the idea of having his child living somewhere and never seeing him again. So he proposed to taking me in as a sole caretaker and leaving his college plans to stay in our city, but his parents weren't thrilled with this plan and pushed him to go to college so that he could provide economically for me. They offered themselves to take care of me, but they were significantly older than my maternal grandparents. She was an only child, and at the time they were just 40, whereas my father has 5 older siblings and his parents were already in their 60s. And since taking care of me meant taking care of my mother for a while as well, my maternal grandparents decided it was the best decision for them to take me. Also, intermediately after I was born, my mother had postnatal depression and the doctors advised them to not completely remove them from her side or more damage to our relationship could be done, and my grandparents wanted her to eventually love me as a son. One thing to note about my father that I didn't mention in my original post is that even when he was in college, he worked part-time to pay child support, and once he started working in a law firm, he started sending more money to my grandparents and set up a college fund for me, which was news for me. My grandparents didn't know about this, but my mother does, so I don't know what to do with this information. My father thought of me all the time he spent away, and believed he had left me with a happy family, and that he was working to give me a better life, but I followed his life through social media. He went to parties, vacations, had girlfriends and did lots of fun stuff, and barely had any contact with me. I asked him why couldn't he have made more of an effort to be a part of my life. Like, I understand if he needed to study in another city and work there, but it's no effort to call or text. Coming once a year just doesn't cut it. He looked ashamed and apologized to me, and I took advice that I saw in a lot of comments here that I would forgive but not forget, and that maybe we can build a relationship going forward, but it will always be marked by his actions in the past. If he hasn't been my dad for 16 years, he can't start now. He seemed sad, but accepted my conditions. I then told him about my concerns about my mother, told him how bad he treated me as a child, that I did not think she would be a good mother for my sibling, and that I wanted to go low or no contact with her. He said that after he left for college and they broke up, he would call her once in a while to check up on things, but that quickly ended, and when he came back she explained to him that her and I had a great bond, and even though we didn't see each other daily, it was because I was in those teenage years, and that she loved spending time with me and had been a very hands-on mum. I told him that all she said was a lie, and that she never cared for me. He obviously read this stuff from my post, but I also told him other things, like when she would ask my grandparents for babysitting money for taking care of me, or that she would call me annoying or disgusting to my face when we still lived together, and that severely messed me up. He was very serious and said he would talk to her, but that he really would not allow a child to be treated like that, and that he was sorry for letting that happen to me. Lastly, he told me I would have a bedroom in his house, but he understood perfectly that I would never live there. He was quite emotional at this point and got choked up at this point when he asked me if, even if I didn't consider him my father, I would consider his baby my sibling. I said of course, and that I planned to be a very active part in their life if I could. He started crying and asked if he could hug me, and this time I agreed. I'm happy about the resolution of our conversation, and I really do believe he will be a good parent for my sibling. Once again, thanks to everyone who commented and took interest in my story. I don't know if I'll update again. Wow, yeah, it sounds like there's definitely hope for the father, and he sounds genuinely remorseful. Obviously that doesn't fully mean he's fixed or anything like that, but there is hope. The mother, on the other hand, I don't know about her. She seems like a lost cause. Some more comments. Someone says, find out who has the college money. My father has it. I have no idea why my biological mother kept the info from us, but my father stressed that the money was for me. Except she's back with him and could lie about it. I mean, I'm just assuming here, but for sure he's the main provider in their household, and I know he's been giving her all sorts of expensive gifts and stuff now that they live together, but that's not my problem, and I don't care. I didn't even know about these college funds until yesterday, so whatever happens between these two honestly is their business. As long as my grandparents or my sibling are not affected, he might as well buy her a diamond necklace with it. Another comment says, your grandparents are great, but should have protected you from your mother better. Opie says, it was hard for them, and I assure you at every possible turn they've taken my side and have scolded my mother for her treatment towards me and taken measures about it, even forcing her to go to therapy, and they made it really clear to me explicitly that I was like a son to them and they wouldn't choose their daughter over me, especially after seeing how she treated me, but it's hard for them because they love her. Someone asks about child support payments. The monthly child support went and still goes to my grandparents. It's the college fund that only she knew about, but that money my father said only he has control over, but I didn't know it existed, and I'm not particularly worried about it. I've never considered my father as a provider, and I've been making plans about my future in my head without this money anyways, and it's nice to know I have this now, but if it weren't here, I would have found my way. Yeah, Opie sounds like he's got a good head screwed on his shoulders. Onto an update the next day. So, a lot of you warned me about the crap hitting the fan, so to speak, when my biological mother talked with my dad, and today, that's exactly what happened. My father sent me a text early in the morning warning me about the fact that he was going to confront my mother, and that he didn't want anything to splash to me, and reassured me that he believed me completely, and I braced myself because I expected for her to call me, berating me or something. I truly don't care about what she thinks, but these past few days have been emotionally draining, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for another full blown-out confrontation. Using Reddit to vent has been helpful though. After a few hours, my mother pulled into our house and let herself in, screaming like mad, and calling me every name in the book, saying I had ruined her relationship, and asking me why had I been blabbing about private matters that don't concern anybody. I said that my childhood matters to me and my father, who was also going to be the future father of her child, and that her actions ruined our relationship. She called me an a-hole and said I was the biggest frickin' mistake she's ever done in her life. I didn't know she could still hurt me, but that was a low blow. And I said that I would do anything in my power to take her baby away from her because she was a monster of a mother. We were screaming at this point, and my grandparents, who were in the backyard, must have heard us and entered the room and separated us and heard part of the fight. I was fighting tears, and my grandma walked me upstairs to my room as my grandpa screamed to my mother, "How dare she speak to me that way?" My grandma soothed me a little and then went to confront my mother with my grandpa. I heard from the door how they ripped my mother a new one. They confronted her for telling me the things that she did, for treating me like garbage all my life, and for lying to my father. They told her how disappointed they were in her for always treating me with disgust, and how many excuses they made for her, thinking she was a child trying to raise a child, but she was now an adult, and her behaviour continued the same, and they said they were on the path of disinheriting her. My mother was screaming about how hard it's been for her, and how much she hurt, but my grandparents were having none of that. They raised me, and she was allowed to have the life she wanted, and to take all the decisions she wanted without repercussions ever, and I even heard them say that if there was any custody battle ensued over the baby to come, they would take the father's side, unless she radically changed everything about her behaviour. They went outside for a while, so I don't know what they said, but eventually they came into my room, and my grandparents looked extremely serious, and my mother was red and crying, and apologised to me through gritted teeth. I didn't respond, but my grandparents said on her behalf that she was going to start therapy immediately, and she was no longer welcome in the house. I called my father after the debacle, and he was furious. He talked to my mother before going to a work meeting thing or something, and he confronted her about everything. Apparently it was nasty, but he was willing to work on the relationship for the good of the baby, on the condition that my mother would also be working on improving her relationship with me, so that whenever I visited them, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. After he left, he made her promise she wouldn't contact me until they talked again. But there's my mother for you folks. I asked him to think on what's better for himself and for the baby, and to not hold today against my mother if he doesn't want to. Also, a thing that has come up a lot in the comments of my previous posts is that my progenitors only want me as a babysitter, and that I should steer away from them and the baby for my own sake. But I want to make a point about that. I can't say nothing about their intentions. I know nothing about that, but I'm really very excited to have a sibling. Growing up, I had a very small family. It was just my grandparents and me. On my paternal side, I had a huge family with aunts, uncles and cousins, but whenever I went there, I always felt like the odd one out. They tried to include me and invited me for Easter and Christmas, barbecues and stuff, but I didn't really know them, and although they were nice, I always felt like I had a big sign on my head that said, "That kid John had in high school." I can't wait to have a sibling and love them and always be there for them and show them what a family is. I want to be that person they can always rely on for them, and I want to feel that bond with someone. So even if I have my misgivings about my parents, and I do a lot, I do not about being a big brother. I hope this is the last update and there's no more family drama in the future. Thank you all for all your help. Having this site to air out my frustrations and having a community to back me up and give me feedback has been amazing, and you truly have helped me out a lot to deal with all of this, so really, thank you so much. She can only hope the mum learns something from the grilling she copped, but honestly I don't have much faith. At least things are looking up for OP though, and I love his attitude around his sibling, it's very sweet. Okay, there must have been more family drama because there was another update, 4 months later. Hi everyone, I posted a few months back about my situation and I just saw someone put my story on TikTok, lol, so I checked back on this account and saw that I still had some notifications asking for an update, so here it is. Well, first, all of my grandparents are as cool as ever. I've not moved, nor I intend to, and we spent Christmas together. It was all great. My father and I have bonded more and we're in a better place. He's paying for my therapy, and we've done a couple of sessions together, and we're in a much better place. He feels sorry for having lost my childhood years, but understands that cannot get them back, and instead of pushing a relationship with me, he's letting me have my space to build as much of a relationship that I want with him, which takes the pressure off me, to be honest. We've kind of bonded over my little sister. We found out it's going to be a girl, and I helped him paint the nursery and build the furniture, which I enjoyed a lot. He and my egg donor are at a bit of a weird situation. They live together, but they're not together. My father is extremely angry about everything that she did and said to me when I was little, and what I related in my previous post, and he is wary about what kind of person she really is going to be with my baby sister. They're going to couples therapy and individual therapy, and although I see her at passing because I go sometimes to my father's house, she's just barely polite with me, and I can tell she feels like I'm the one who screwed up her opportunity to play house with her second baby. I try to pay her no mind, but the only thing that worries me is if she eventually is going to poison my little sister's mind against me, or subject her to a similar mistreatment like she did to me, because she is also going to be born around all this tension. The silver lining is that everyone else is showing up for my little sister, and that means I've also connected much more with my father's side of the family. They've always been kind to me, but I always felt weird around them. But now that things with my father seem to be settling into a more comfortable way, I feel like I belong into his family more, and I can hang out with my cousins and aunts and uncles more. Sorry if it's not much of an update, but here's how things lay at the moment. Yeah, pretty positive. But yeah, I agree, you can't help but feel a little bit worried with how the little sister's going to be treated. It doesn't sound like the mum's learnt an awful lot. Okay folks, let's go to the last update so far. So, it's been a while, but recent developments have brought me back here to give you all a bit of an update. First of all, thank you everyone who has messaged me and shown me that my situation and I are in their minds. It helps a lot. To do a bit of recap and avoid all of you going through the entire saga, my parents had me in their teens, they left me to be raised by my maternal grandparents, which turned out to be the perfect family for me. My egg donor was somewhat in my life growing up, but she was nasty and toxic to me. My dad was absent most of the time, but he was a more positive force on my life. They got together about 2 years ago and tried to make me, now 17, move in with them, to which I refused, and they also announced they were expecting, which sent me off and I lashed out at them. That opened the Pandora's box of lies and manipulation that my egg donor had been feeding my father for years and created an overall messy situation with her blaming me for everything. Me and my father have been developing a stronger relationship and we've become quite close, although I still have some barriers up. My egg donor has been giving me the cold shoulder for the remaining of the pregnancy, and my father was considering whether or not to try and continue the relationship. This brings us to present times. They had a daughter named Ella, who is the most beautiful, charming, and cute baby I've ever seen. My father was ecstatic when she was being delivered and asked me if I wanted to remain in the hospital during the labour, which I happily agreed. It was amazing to see my sister for the first time, and me and my father both cried while holding her. My egg donor, on the other hand, looked at her with little care and tried to pass her off to whoever was around so she wouldn't have to hold her. The relationship of my parents at this moment was on thin ice, but the maternal spirit that my mother thought she would develop with this child never materialized. When they got home, they received dozens of visits from relatives and friends, and my dad had to take care of everything because my egg donor refused to even be near the baby. Doctors worried she must have been suffering from postpartum depression, but she refused to accept help or counsel. I tried to be gentler to her those days to ease her mental state, but things just got worse. It all came to a head a few days ago when my father went to do the groceries and saw on the nanny cam that the egg donor was cursing at Ella, and by the time he made it home, my mother was actually slapping the baby. My father got furious, and she just responded by saying something along the lines of, "These kids are trying to keep us apart. We should get rid of them." My father called the police and had my mother forcibly taken to have a psych evaluation. I rushed to his side when I got wind of it. Luckily, my sister is all right. While my egg donor was in the psych evaluation, my father decided that she could no longer live under the same roof as her, and she had to take my sister away from her mother. I came up with the plan that, when my mother was released, she could go rest and start treatment at my grandparents', while I would move with my father for a while to help him out and avoid drama. Ironically, all of this started because I didn't want to live with my dad, and now that's where I am. My grandparents keep me updated on my egg donor's progress. There are days where she feels truly ashamed of what she did and wants to go back to my dad, others where she's lethargic and non-responsive, and others where she seems happy and content and talks about a clean slate. There would be a court proceeding over the custody of Ella, but we've gotten some sort of emergency ruling granting my dad full custody at the moment. Anyway, things are a bit of a mess, and I wish things hadn't turned out the way they have. Hopefully I'll still be able to be around my sister and whatever is happening to my egg donor can be addressed so that she can get better. My grandparents are so destroyed with all that's happening with their daughter that they're having a hard time to cope, but they come nearly every day to check on Ella and I, which is nice. My dad is also very distraught, and even though he is now categorically rejecting the idea of ever getting back together with egg donor, he still feels sad to see how a mother can treat her baby, and he's mourning the relationship and the life he thought he would have. On my part, I've been busy with school, and even though I try to understand that my mother is sick, I can't seem to forgive her for what she's done to Ella. If this was her first incident of being negligent or violent, I might be more understanding, but I feel like she's going to be as toxic to my sister as she's always been to me, and I don't want her near us for a second. Alrighty folks, and that's the end of that story. Yeah, I'm kind of with OP on this one. If it was her first time being negligent, you could kind of understand, PPD and things like that. But the fact that she's done it before, and then she continues to do it again, like why is she even having kids again at this point? Did she think it was just going to be some magical band-aid on her psyche or something? I don't know, man. The grandparents are the real MVP of this story. Even with OP moved out, they still make an effort to see him daily. That's real love right there. I guess all you can hope for is that she gets better with whatever psych treatment they're giving her. But honestly, I wouldn't hold my breath for it. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this story. Let me know down in the comments. Anyway, let's move on to another one. Okay, well, over on True Off My Chest, this one was written by user Main Site, and it's titled, My wife said she does not owe me sex. And she is right. She does not owe me sex just because I'm her husband, but I can't take it anymore. Sexual incompatibility is hell. I've been busy drafting divorce documents with my lawyer this week. I believe it's best if we separate because we became incompatible after some time. 4 years of marriage, both in early 30s, hormone tests came up normal. I begged her for marriage counselling with sex therapy. I did everything she pointed out, and she came with other excuses. Since the beginning of the relationship, we take turns handling laundry and dishes. For the other tasks, we have our own responsibilities for different rooms and tasks. It is not in the sexual department as well. She does not seem to be into having non-sexual intimacy either recently. Countless discussions and nothing in the end. It was not like that in the beginning, so I'm not sure what happened. Marriage counselling and sexual therapy did not work either. She seems happy in the relationship and daily life, but I'm not. We had sex only 2 times since the beginning of this year. She mentioned we should try to start having kids at the beginning of this week, and I got annoyed. What am I? Something kept for only breeding? I will give her the divorce notice documents next Monday, and I'm torn the relationship will end like that. I'll also leave the house as soon as possible. However, I'm sure I'm doing both of us a favour in the long run. We should separate before having kids. I just wanted to vent and get an opinion from a neutral point of view. Yeah, a sad but all too common occurrence these days. I wouldn't have a kid with her either. Let's go to some comments. That's crazy that she's considering having kids with you and you were considering divorce. 2 people living together, yet so far apart. Thank you for not bringing kids into this marriage. Opie says, it's obvious the resentment would grow even more in the future. Having a child in that environment would be such a cruel thing to do. It's not just the lack of sex though, is it? There's no physical intimacy at all. No cuddles, cute pats on the butt, holding hands, all the stuff that bonds a couple. At this point, you're roommates. Another commenter replies, sure, sexual compatibility is important, but it's absolutely normal to go through dry spells for various reasons. But the physical and emotional intimacy goes way beyond sex, and it's really important to keep up the small gestures of love. 4 years no kids is way too soon to be in a sexless marriage. Unless she has some serious medical issues, it's time to end it. P.S. My wife and I have been together over a decade, have 2 kids, and after years of sex, we got kind of bored with it. We made a conscious decision to have less sex, but when we do have sex, it's much better than the better weekly sex we used to have. We turned it down on purpose to make it better, and we still are more sexually active than your situation. Yeah, go spend your life with someone that wants to screw your brains out. Even if it doesn't happen that often, that's okay. Amen. This is not a healthy way to live. Let's go to an update. The first post can be found on my profile. I'll keep this update short. She got the notice papers this Monday and was shocked. I explained her in detail and thoroughly why I came to that decision. I pointed out every previous discussion we had, how there were no efforts from her side, and we are simply incompatible in the end. There was crying and arguments again. I also told her I would be going back to my hometown to settle in my premarital house. It was my mum's, but after she passed away, we shared it half and half with my sister, though I gave my share to my sister later. We had to move to our current city due to my wife's job. A lot happened that day, but I'll not give details, they were mostly personal. The next day, I started packing important things, and out of a sudden, my wife became the most sexual person on the planet. She came to me with lingerie, sex toys, costumes, and approached me. I'm going to be honest, I had a very hard time resisting, but rejected her advances every time. She is the woman I love and desire after all, but I don't think staying in this marriage will be healthy for either of us. I'm currently staying at a hotel with my important belongings. I changed my passwords and handled other shared things. My sister will come next week to get me, and I believe I'll be staying at her place in our hometown for a while, at least until beds and furniture are delivered to the house. Some Redditors pointed out that she may be cheating on me, but she did not give me reason to be suspicious of. I trust her fully. I just wish we were more compatible in the intimacy department. She is trying to reach out to me, but I reject her calls and don't read her texts. I may need a few days of peace and silence to get myself ready for everything upcoming. Thank you for the advice and suggestions on the last thread. Take care. Opie on what he plans to do once the divorce is finalised. Dating is not the first thing on my mind right now. I need to settle into the new house, get used to it, and I'm in the process of changing jobs after my notice. I need to handle these things to consider dating. Also, I don't think I'll have a hard time meeting with new people. For the dating her part, I do not know, and I do not think it's realistic either. One commenter says, "Well done for being strong when she confronted you with everything you'd been wishing she would. That was a good choice. Giving in would have prolonged this cul-de-sac in both of your lives and caused lots of harm in the end." And another comment says, "It's a little insulting that your ex-wife only became open to sex after you gave her divorce papers. It showed that she could have made an effort but consciously chose not to. She considers her happiness worth the effort, but not yours. Proceeding with the divorce is the right thing to do. You're not the problem, your ex is. You can find happiness with someone else." Yeah, enough said. I think it was the right decision. What about you guys? Do you agree? Let me know in the comments. Either way, let's move on to another one. Okay, jumping over to Petty Revenge. This one was written by user Stinky Fish Chest, and it's titled, "I made a dude get his nuts waxed on the first date after he lied to me." When I was in my early 20s and online dating was just starting, I made a profile and said I was just not going to be into two things: smokers and people with kids. Just that. You could be anything else, and if the chemistry is there, we're all good. I meet this guy early in the morning for a breakfast date, and we're hitting it off averagely. No sparks, but no red flags. The date goes for 2.5 hours, breakfast taking forever, until we're splitting the bill, and he tells me he has a kid. I asked him if he read my profile to know that I was not interested in that, and he says, "Yes, I read that, but knew that if you just spent some time with me, you'd see how great I am, and how you'd be willing to see past that." I was floored, as now he wasted 3 hours of my life and was okay with being a liar. That was unacceptable to me. I said, "Well, I don't want this date to end, but I have to go across town to get my Brazilian, where they take all the hair off, including the bumhole, done in an hour. Want to come with me and get one too? It's not painful." A total lie. "And I think it's attractive on men to be clean there. No pressure, but I'm pretty busy the rest of the week, and this is my only free day." He was all about following me anywhere. I told the ladies that this was his first time, and that they should take everything, including the butt. He held my hand between a curtain, and we both got them done at the same time. He screamed a lot, but was a champ and went through it. I made him pay for his own, and never called him again. If you're out there, Chris, please don't lie to women on the first date. It's a really bad way to start a relationship. I'm just wincing thinking about that. Ugh. Opie makes an edit. Wow, well, it seems like most people have 3 general reactions. 1, this is delightfully petty. 2, you're a horrible person, plus other expletives. And 3, this is fake. 1, thank you all for the validation that online dating sucks for all genders and you shouldn't go into it with a lie. 2, yeah, I am a horrible person. And 3, it's not fake, but you can think so if you want. When I was in my early 20s, I did a lot of things I maybe still do now, and some I wouldn't. And to all of those sending me messages calling me nasty things behind your keyboards, this is Petty Revenge, so you came here for this crap. Okay, let's read some comments. "You told me it wouldn't hurt." "Yes, but I knew that if you just spent some time on it, you'd be able to see past that." "I'm freaking baffled that anyone would think tearing pubic hair out by the roots wouldn't hurt." "I had a male friend that claimed waxing didn't hurt at all. I happened to have a leg waxing appointment later that day. I told him I'd pay for the waxing, but he needed to try armpit waxing. It was amazing, lol. His girlfriend was annoyed he downplayed the pain of waxing and enthusiastically agreed. He should show us what wimps we were. He shows up, first shocker, and then proceeds to argue about trimming the hair down closer to the skin. Tells the tech in a very mansplaining way longer hair will allow more grip when it's pulled. Manager got involved and tried to explain the process. Nope, he's insistent. So she does exactly what he tells her, with the manager approval to follow his directives. The first yell, we giggled. The second one, we smirked. 5 minutes later, we grew concerned, and his girlfriend checked in on him, asking if he wanted to stop. "Nope, I'm fine, it's just a little pain." She asked if he wanted the tech to trim the hair on the other armpit before waxing. This, he conceded, might make the process faster. 30 minutes later, he comes out holding both arms out from his sides, grumbling about how it was stupid to remove hair with wax. To this day, when he starts mansplaining something, we ask if he wants another wax job. He usually just gets a look of pain and just says, "Do what you want." Laughing my ass off. Yeah, he asked for it. Not all heroes have carpet. Okay, and that's the end of that one, guys. We're going to leave that one there. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Anyway, that's it from me today. Hope you guys enjoyed those stories. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.